Okay, we're recording. Oh my goodness. We are here. We are live. Oh my gosh, this is so freaking exciting. Okay, so welcome back to the show, my friends. I am very excited to finally record again. I've taken a very long time off from podcasting because I honestly just didn't feel. I'm just jumping straight into it. I have been dealing with a lot of things on top of school and work, so that has taken up a lot of my time. But not only that, but I stopped talking about things because I honestly felt like I was not qualified enough to talk about the things that I was talking about. It was like I just didn't feel qualified to talk about really anything anymore because of this issue that I'm going to be talking about today. And so, my friends, I've taken a long break from things. I've tried to come up with a plan, and I have a plan. So this next few months of content I have a plan for. So basically, I'm going to explain this a little bit real quick before we get into the kind of topic. Also, if you are a normal listener, a usual listener, watch it on YouTube because I have a camera now. I've got this whole setup in my closet. As you can see, if you're on YouTube right now, you can probably, you can tell. So I'm recording in my closet. It's great. It's super cool. I got this super cool studio set up now, so it's a lot of fun. But okay, where was I? Okay, so I wanted to talk about a little bit why I kind of took a break, why I didn't feel qualified to talk about things and stuff like that. So where was I going with this? I know I had something to say. Okay. So I have a plan for the next few months, broadly, and the next few the big topic, the kind of big thing that we're going to be diving deep into is the question: is God real? And many of you guys are Christian listeners, and many of you guys are not. But the question is God real? Is any of this real, I guess? There's going to be a lot of crazy questions and a lot of philosophy, theology. There's going to be a lot of history. And, I'm changing my content a lot. And I'm going through these. I'll explain why in a second, but I'm going through the fundamental questions of life, I believe, and some of the most important questions I think anybody could ever ask. And whether you're a Christian, a non-Christian, you believe in something else, you don't believe in anything, I think that this next series in the podcast is going to be beneficial for everybody because, whether you believe something or you don't believe anything, I think it's good to understand why you believe that thing. And that's kind of what we're getting at with this next series is why do you believe what you believe? And is what you believe really worth basing your life on? I think these are the most important. Oh my gosh, I forgot to press record. So I think these are the most important questions that anybody could ever ask. And I think, wherever you're at in life, I think these topics will be beneficial for every single person listening. Because, whether you believe firmly in what you believe or you don't believe anything or you kind of believe in something but not really, I want to help answer these questions, and I'm not going to answer these questions for you. This next kind of series is about you finding the answers for yourself, and that's kind of what I'm going to be doing through these topics. So these are things that I have not I don't have answers for. And I'm not going to pretend like I have all the answers about the world, because I don't. But we are going to be diving deep into these conversations and these topics together because I am trying to figure out these questions. These are things that I'm trying to answer along the way. So that's kind of how I'm going about this next series. But now that I have that out of the way, I figured it is time to tell you why. Why, Jameson? Because you were a solid believer. You were a firm believer in your faith, and you were a Christian. Why are you questioning anything? Well, my friends, purpose would be my answer to that. Meaning and purpose. So it's a long story, and I'm going to try and shorten it a little bit. But it was about a year ago from now, and I was trying to start this agency company up. And for this agency company, if you've heard my previous content, you know my story with demons and stuff like that. You know kind of where I stand religiously, or where I have stood. But these topics I'm coming at with a unbiased. I'm taking the bias out of these topics and these conversations so I can find the answers alongside you. Instead of telling you the answers, I am looking for the answers myself. So anyways, I was starting this agency company, right? And for this agency company, I had to do this. I don't even know why I'm saying this. Long story short, I heard what I perceived to be God tell me that this next couple of years were going to be filled with a lot of confusion and reflection, and that I was going to be taken off the path that I was on, because if you know me, you know my content. I was very, this is right, this is wrong, and this is how you live your life, kind of person. And a lot of it came from experience, and a lot of that's, that stuff that I was saying, really, was backed in research, and, a lot of it was true stuff, but I think I went about it wrong. And I've come to realize that there isn't always definite answers to questions, and there is some gray area. Not everything is black and white. So basically, I kind of got where I'm at now. I'm just going to explain where I'm at now. So today's topic is kind of about identity and what you put your identity in and how to find your identity. So what even is your identity? Why is this even important? So me, if you've heard any of my other content, I was a very black and white kind of person. I was very this is right, this is wrong, no question about it, and I was kind of but I was trying to help, it wasn't you have to change to this way. I was genuinely trying to help, and that's what I'm trying to do. But I had my life planned out. I had my identity was solid. I had my future planned out. I knew what I wanted to be. I knew what I wanted to do. I knew who I was. I knew who I was going to be. And one day, I don't know how exactly this happened, but I just got really kind of hit with these questions all of a sudden. And I was like I was hit by a freaking train, dude. It was pretty intense. So, I kind of came to the realization, okay, that, what I had put my identity in was, the person I was I go to the gym. I'm going to be successful someday. I want to be successful, I'm going to be rich someday. Whatever. I work super hard. I work long hours. I do this, I do that. All these different things, right? That was all these different things created my identity. All of these different things was me. That was me. I go to the gym. I'm a hard worker. I'm going to be successful. That's who I was. Fundamentally, foundationally, that's who I was. And so with that identity came goals and dreams. And I was like, man, this is what my future is going to be. These are my goals. This is where I'm, planning on, this is what I'm going to do. And so I had a purpose, so I knew, it was like I could, I was okay. I was so okay in life because I knew what the end goal was supposed to be for me. And I knew what I wanted to be. And I had a purpose, a reason for living. And, one day it just really hit me. It just really, really hit me hard. And I was like, man, it was kind of like a slow fade, I guess, because I was living this life day by day, doing the same things. I was doing the podcast. I was going to work. I was going to the gym. I was doing these things, trying to help people, whatever. And I was like, just burnt out. I was like, man, is this really the life that I chose? Is this really what life is about? Like, if life is supposed to be about success and, if I just built my whole life on this success and I was like, man, I am a successful person, or I'm going to be a successful person, and that's what I built my life on, my foundation on. I was like, man, is this really what life is about? I'm not happy right now. And I know, let me just say this real quick. I know that life is not about happiness, and that's not the ultimate goal for life. Obviously, we want to enjoy life, but there is suffering in life, and that's just a part of reality, so I understand that. But if I'm living my everyday life and I'm not enjoying it, I'm like, man, why am I doing this? Why am I choosing? Why? I was like, wait. One day I was like in the gym, I'm lifting this weight and I'm like, I'm not even enjoying this right now. Why do I even go to the gym? Maybe to keep my body, I guess. That's mediocre. Like, I don't know. Why do I even do this if I'm not enjoying it? And then I'm like, okay, my job, which I love my job, but, I guess I have a lot of, kind of depression sometimes. So, and I'm like thinking, and I'm like, why do I work at this job where I don't feel fulfilled? I enjoy my job, but I'm not fulfilled. I'm not being who I am supposed to be. And the podcast isn't gaining the traction that I wanted it to get or whatever. And whatever. So I had all these things my whole life. I was like, why do I do these things if I don't enjoy my life? Is this really what life is about? And I really just got in this confusion and this questioning. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then that made me realize what I've put my identity in, which was success. And I was like, man, I'm chasing every single day for this success. I'm chasing every day for this gratification. And I'm only happy if I can make a sale, or I'm only happy if I can do X amount of things in a day. Like, my standard was so high for myself. And I was like, okay, if my identity is built in success, when I'm not successful, I'm depressed. I'm not happy. I'm not satisfied. I'm very uncomfortable, actually. I'm like very hard on myself. But it's not about being hard on myself. It's about the fact that I was living my life for something that comes and goes so quickly. It is success is so, like, every time I would reach a milestone, a goalpost, I would move it farther back. Every time I would climb a mountain, I would say, I want to climb that other one. It wasn't enough. Every time I would achieve something, it was never enough. It was never satisfying or fulfilling. And so I got in this cycle of, I came to realize that I was like, wow, what am I doing? I'm not happy. I keep chasing these goals that I may attain, and then they leave so quickly. That satisfaction, that happiness leaves so quickly. That can't be what life is about, right? It can't be. And so when I started to ask that, when I came to that realization, I was like, wow, this cannot be what life is about. How can my entire life, my existence, be built on this battle with myself, this constant, never-ending battle with myself? Is this really what I'm here for? Is this really my meaning, my purpose? I put it in this success that just comes and goes so quickly. And so I was like, okay, so I've now come to the realization that I have put my identity in something that will not fulfill me. I've put my purpose in something that will not fulfill me. Your ultimate purpose, though, is, I think everybody should have an ultimate purpose and meaning. And I've talked to several people about this, and there's been so many people that have said, Jameson, you are never going to find that answer. What's your ultimate purpose and your ultimate meaning? What's the purpose in life? You're never going to find the answer. And I disagree. I think if if you have no purpose or meaning in life, no purpose or meaning in living, and your life is suffering, then why would you live it? If you have no reason to stay, no goal you're trying to achieve, or no reason to live, why would you live it? And I'm not telling you, if you don't have those answers right now, to do anything. I'm just, logically, that's what I was asking, so, and I think we come up with temporary purposes and meanings, so, I totally 100% believe, like, even though I may not know my ultimate purpose and meaning right now, I know that my temporary purpose right now is to find the answer to that question. And through that, I've got this little graph I'm going to explain. So I came to realize that I was living my life for the wrong reason. I was living my entire life for something that could just be taken from me in an instant. And what I mean by that is just, I was living my life for a fleeting satisfaction. And so I was trying to think about it, and I was like, okay, so then if I know that success can't be, it's not satisfying, it's not fulfilling me, if okay, so if that's not working, then what is my purpose and meaning in life? How do I even find that? What does that even mean? Okay, and I'm like, okay, well, it comes down to identity. So if I know who I am, then I know what I'm living for. But how do you know who you are? And I was like, okay, well, I've built my identity in this success, in this, this bubble of, I go to the gym, I do this, I do that, I'm a hard worker, whatever, I'm a this and that, whatever, right? This is who I am. And I began to question, I was like, okay, so like, how do I know what's right and wrong? I was like, who's to say that I'm right and somebody else is wrong? Like, why do I think that drinking is so bad? Because I had a problem with it when I was like younger. Like, I don't know, like, why is it so bad? It's not the end of the world if somebody has a drink, And so I'm like, okay, well, I guess I've been thinking pretty black and white about things. And I'm like, what has made me think, what makes something right and wrong? And I was like, oh, okay. The reason I think that the reason I have these beliefs is because of my identity. My identity shapes, your identity shapes what you believe. And so I believed that if I'm going to be successful, if I'm going to be doing these things and those things, and I'm going to be rich someday or whatever, I'm a hard worker, drinking doesn't align with that identity. And so therefore, it must be wrong. Smoking weed, must be wrong because it doesn't align with my identity of success and hardworking and whatever, right? Even though I may not necessarily think that it is, inherently bad, it was for me because it didn't align with my identity. You see what I'm saying? And so then I'm questioning, like, okay, so then what is right and wrong? How do I even know that? You can't even know what's right and wrong if you don't know who you are. And so I was like a train, I was on a track and I just got freaking derailed. I was like, oh my gosh, I have no idea. I don't know anything. What is life? So I'm like, okay, if I've lost so I had put my identity in these things. So once I realized this purpose stuff and I was like, okay, this is why I'm living my life, but it's not fulfilling. Then I came to realize that I don't know what's right and wrong and whatever through the identity, but I came to find that my identity was not solid because I was like, okay, well, let's look at this a little bit closer. So if my identity is I'm a hard worker, I go to the gym, I do this, I do that, I'm going to be rich one day, whatever. If that is my identity, I came to realize that my identity could be taken from me in an instant. And it did. If I got in a car accident and I was paralyzed, I would no longer be able to go to the gym. I would no longer be able to work this many hours. I would no longer be able to work this hard. All these things that had defined me as a person, that had been my entire existence, I had realized could be taken from me in an instant. And so I'm like, oh my gosh. I could have built an entire life on this identity that could have been taken from me in an instant. And so I'm like, okay, I need to figure out who I am and what I believe. I need to figure out the foundation of me. Who am I? What am I here for? What's the purpose? What is the meaning in life? Because if I'm going to live my life, I need to know. If I want to know what job I want to work, a job that gives me meaning and satisfaction, I need to know who I am. At least at some level, I need to know who I am. And I could say that by like at very basic, let's just say I know the only thing I know is that I like skateboarding. Now, I might work for a skate shop or work for, like teaching people how to skate or whatever, because that's what I know who I am. I enjoy skateboarding, and that's who I am. And so that's the job that I'm going to do because I know that part of me. I have that sense of myself, that sense of identity, right? Now, if you have no sense of identity, you have no idea who you are, how are you supposed to choose what job you want to do? So, and a lot of people would say, you're not supposed to enjoy your job, but for me, I want to enjoy my job. I want to enjoy what I'm doing for the rest of my life. I want to enjoy my life because I know, like, even I might not even enjoy it, but as long as I can find fulfillment and satisfaction and know that I'm making a change and it's meaningful to me, I could do that. But if I could never live a life where I found no meaning or fulfillment in anything, and I think that would be very difficult for like most people, right? So, okay, so now that I've butchered this a little bit, I'm not going with a script today. I'm literally just looking at this little graph that I built that I'm now having a hard time explaining to you in a coherent way. So, okay, so if you want to know your purpose, what you're going to do on this earth, what you're going to live your life for, you need to know who you are. And if you want to know who you are, you need to have a solid foundation. You need to know what you believe, what is true. What foundation are you building your life on? What foundation are you building your life on? And so the foundation I was building my life on was go to the gym, success, money, whatever, help people, all these things. And I'm like, when I realized that foundation that I was literally building the rest of my life on could just be taken from me. It's like a house of cards is how I'd like to describe it. So the foundation, I was building a house. Let's say your life is your house. Okay, I'm trying to make this coherent for everybody. So let's say that your life is your house. Okay. Now you have your foundation that you need to start with, right? You start with your beliefs. What do you believe? What do you know to be true? Yada, yada, yada. That forms your identity. And then you kind of understand who you are. And you kind of know, like, what do I enjoy? Does this align with my beliefs? And then through that, you choose your career. Through your identity, you then go on to, oh, okay, I'm going to do this job. I'm not going to do this job. I believe this is, and then you get into right and wrong. If you have an identity, you believe, what's right and wrong. And then you also, your identity forms your behavior. So who you are, who you know that you are, so you have the foundation, you have the beliefs, and then that forms your identity, which then forms how you behave, how what you believe is right and wrong, and you have your identity, shapes your career, your choices that you make, I guess. Who you are determines those things, which ultimately lead to your purpose. Why are you here? And so if I'm sitting here like, these things are like the walls of your house, your identity is going to be like the walls, the structure of your house. And then what believing through your identity, you can then find what is right and wrong. You can then find your, how you're going to behave in the world, and what you want to do, the choices that you make. The choices you make are who you are. They're based off of who you are. You would never do something that is not you, if that makes sense. And if you're going to disagree with me on that, like, that's another topic for another day. But ultimately, who you are, your identity shapes the rest of your life. Who you are shapes what you believe is right and wrong, shapes your behavior and the choices that you make. So don't you think that that's a pretty freaking important question? Who am I? And to figure out who you are, you need to have a foundation. And so what I had come to realize is that this life that I was living, I was I was building this house on sand. I was building this entire house, and I was getting so far, and I realized that, if I was 60 years old and I finally had this realization, I would have built a freaking mansion, a freaking castle. I would have lived my life for so long, choosing this over that, choosing to behave this way, choosing to work this job, all on a foundation of sand that could have been, that if I got in an accident when I was 60 years old, everything could have just been taken from me. My whole identity could have been taken from me in an instant. And so, my friends, that is why this is so very important, because your identity shapes the rest of your life. Your identity, who you fundamentally are, shapes how you are going to act, how you are going to live your life, what you believe is right and wrong, what choices you're going to make. And so if we want to figure out who we are, our identity, we need to figure out what we believe first. And what you believe shapes who you are. And so a lot of people go about this backwards, I think. A lot of people go about this going, okay, well, they have this existential crisis, and this is kind of like what an existential crisis is. They have this existential crisis, and they're like, what's the meaning and purpose in life? Oh, well, this is the job that I'm working, so this must mean that life is about this. No, you're going about it backwards. You need to figure out who you are before you figure out those things. I firmly believe in that. And so if you want to know who you are, which is going to shape the rest of your life, the rest of how you live your life, if you want to know if smoking weed is good or bad, if it's right or wrong, how do you know if smoking weed is right or wrong if you don't have a sense of identity, if you don't know who you are? How can you say, and you can't know who you are without having these fundamental foundational beliefs. I hope that I know I'm kind of repetitive, but this is kind of a big topic to grasp, so I'm kind of repeating myself a little bit, just in different ways. And so your foundation, what you believe, is going to shape the entire rest of your life. What you believe will shape your identity, which will then shape how you react, how you respond, what choices you make, what you believe is right and wrong, what you do, and then you find your ultimate meaning and purpose. So that is why, my friends, we are going into the discussion, this big topic. Is God real? Because if God is real, then we can find some answers. But then not only is God real, but then which God is real? You see what I'm saying? So what you believe will fundamentally shape the rest of your life. We need to make sure that we build our life on a solid foundation. I need to make sure that this house that I build, this life that I live, is not going to come tumbling down when I'm 60 years old, 80 years old, whatever. The longer, the more painful it'll be. But if I want to know that I don't have to worry about that, I know why I'm here, I know what I'm doing here, you need to start with a solid foundation. You need to know what you believe, because that will ultimately shape the rest of your life. So we need to get it right. And because that is who I am. So a lot of these topics, like, we are going to get into like philosophy, theology. We are getting into history. We are getting into freaking like science. Like, we're getting into it heavy, okay? We're going into the rabbit holes. I'm going to try and stay out of like the deeper rabbit holes that, I'm going to try and keep it focused, okay? Because we got a goal, we got a mission. What do we believe? And rather than telling you what you believe or what to believe, I'm going to explain the different beliefs. We're going to be going through different beliefs, what works, what doesn't work, logically, through all these different mediums, right? Does this make sense? Does that not make sense? And we're going to be going through it together. So I'm not going to sit here with a bias. Whoa, my microphone just like cut out for a second or whatever. I'm not going to sit here with a bias. I'm not going to tell you need to believe this or that. I'm not going to tell you what's right and wrong. We are going to find it together. So, because what you believe is fundamentally the most important thing you can ever find, I think it's important to spend the right amount of time on it. So, next week's topic, my friends, is knowledge. You may be thinking, how is that? I don't know if it's going to be next week or in a couple of weeks or whatever, but I have read several books about this. I have looked at so many videos. I've heard philosophers, professors. I've heard, my goodness, you guys, I am doing the work for these topics and I'm so freaking excited. You know how I get when I get into a topic. I'm like, my gosh, I can't stop. It's like obsessed. It's bad. But next week we're talking about knowledge. This week we talked about identity, why it's important. Well, your identity is important. Short answer, just to be super clear. Your identity is important because it shapes the rest of your life. It shapes the rest of your life. So thank you so much, my friends, to you if you made it this far. I am impressed. The next, we're diving heavy into philosophy and religions and stuff like that. So stay tuned. I'm so freaking excited to finally kick this off with you guys. Leave comments or whatever in the comment section, I guess, because I'm now moving to YouTube. So that's super cool. Check out the Instagram at InfluxPod. I changed it. You're welcome. My gosh, I suck at outros because it's been so long, but thank you again for listening. I appreciate you. I love you. Peace.